morning. Thanks for forsaking your Saturday morning lie-in to join us for live coverage of qualifying for tomorrow's Malaysian Grand Prix. And if you thought that your bed was warm, spare a thought for the 24 drivers gearing up for today's pole position shootout. Temperatures in the cockpit could reach as much as 60 degrees. And to be quite honest, here in the garage for all the guys working away on the car, it's not much cooler either. Mind you, 7 days ago in Australia, Jenson was the hottest of the lot as he picked up his first win for McLaren. He arrives here at the third race of 2010, brimming with confidence. It's 2 races down, 17 to go.
When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse.
Bahrain didn't necessarily deliver. Is Melbourne going to get us back on the right track when the lights go out?
Lights will guide you home. I will try to fix you.
Vettel's away, gingerly but ahead. There's a spin there with that Alonso there facing the wrong way. Drama already here in Melbourne.
Hamilton coming at the inside of Button. Slicks for Button. Brave.
Webber's off into the gravel. Webber now boldly coming through. Hamilton's come past as well. Oh, Webber's gone off. Sebastian Vettel is out. Jenson Button is now leading. There's been a collision. It's Hamilton and Webber.
So boring, this Formula One. It's what I hate about it most.
So the flashbulbs and McLaren's rocket red t-shirts lit up Melbourne. 4,000 miles away and 7 days later, who will be 25 points better off after this weekend's race? So far, he is the man to beat in qualifying. Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel has had 2 successive pole positions so far, but hasn't managed to turn either of them into a win. And the season's disappearing before his eyes. The first clutch of long-haul races are almost over. It's China in a fortnight's time before the European part of the season gets underway in Barcelona on May the 9th. And how much would Fernando Alonso like to be leading the way in front of his home crowd then? He currently tops the driver standings with 37 points, just ahead of his new teammate Felipe Massa. McLaren's British duo sit just behind them. So far, Michael Schumacher has garnered 9 points from 2 races into his return. And as far as the Constructors' race is concerned, Red Bull will be smarting after dominating qualifying, leading both races, but managing to pick up just 18 points to Ferrari's 70. And of course, in Formula One, points mean prizes. David Coulthard and Eddie Jordan know that just about as well as anybody else. But this weekend, guys, I think it's a case of whoever can handle the heat is going to do well, because the conditions are sweltering. It's unbelievable, David.
Yeah, I always thought it was pretty hot when I was in the car, but honest, it's easier to handle it in a race suit than it is in our civvies. So apologies to everyone at home if we're looking a little bit on the shiny side.
First thing on a Saturday morning, Eddie, you look like you've sort of just stepped out of the shower. Your hair's soaking already.
It's not just the heat, the noise of those cars going by. It's like, if I can remind somebody at home, when you open the oven door when you sort of come home late at night and you forgot to turn the oven off, you get this massive gush of air. That's what it's like, but on a continual basis.
It's incredible, isn't it? The Formula BMW boys are flying around on the circuit. They're fighting for their own championship. We're focused, of course, on the Formula One World Championship, and already, just a couple of races in, the competitive picture is starting to emerge, isn't it?
Indeed, what we've seen in the first 2 races is that Red Bull are setting the pace in qualifying, but reliability woes are meaning they're not delivering the wins at the end of the race. So we stand here in Malaysia with Ferrari topping the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship.
Eddie?
Well, before the season started, the top 4 they're just in different orders to what we thought, but the top 4 are very strong and they're beginning to pull away from the rest. But titanic battle we've seen already. You've alluded to the fact that Vettel is still a class act, and Red Bull, you know, they've got a bit of catching up to do, but they're still very strong and must not be counted out like some people seem to think they are.
OK, well, qualifying is coming your way at 9 o'clock this morning. Before then, we're going to discuss the credentials of all of the championship contenders. Hopefully, we're also going to hear from Christian Horner of Red Bull Racing. Ross Brawn is going to join us. We'll also discuss the future of Formula One after qualifying today with Martin Whitmarsh, who's the McLaren team principal and also the chairman of FOTA at the moment. But let's start by talking about the drivers. And let's focus, first of all, on the man whose car is just behind us, the man who picked up his first win for McLaren 1 week ago. OK, now how important was this for David Coulthard? This is Jenson Button's first win for McLaren.
Yeah, this is a key moment in his career. Obviously a dream scenario for him to get the first win of the 2010 season ahead of Lewis, who's been there for many years. We saw that at the beginning of this Grand Prix, it didn't start at all well for him, but finding that he'd burned out his intermediate tyres, he forced himself into a pit stop, which turned out to be absolutely key to winning that Grand Prix.
And you spent many years, Eddie, working with drivers, trying to sort out the dynamic between them. Looking at this one from afar, how would you assess how well Jenson Button has slipped into McLaren so far?
Well, it's a fairy tale. It's almost replicated from what happened to him last year. No one gave him a chance of doing and winning the first race. He won in Australia, as we know, and of course then again he backs it up. This guy, from me, has been hugely impressive, not just as a driver, but we talked about it last week, as a world champion. He's fantastic.
He's been so calm since he won that world championship, and you can see that his whole pre-season preparation, all the questions about is this Lewis's team, all the time was saying, I'm the world champion, I now want to take a new challenge, and if Lewis is considered as being one of the best drivers in the world, well, let me show what I can do alongside him.
And behind us, his guys are actually working away. They've got the setup wheels on here at the moment, and interestingly, this weekend, Jenson has actually said he struggled to get the car set up. These guys are working away to make sure this is perfect for him, and he is a driver that likes to have the perfect car, doesn't he?
When Jenson's on song, when the car's talking to him, giving the feedback that he needs to deliver the lap time, it's fantastic to watch, so smooth behind the wheel. But one of the small weaknesses in his driving style is that when the car's not quite to his liking, then we tend to see a little bit of a drop-off in performance. I think this is quite interesting, that with less than an hour to go to qualifying, his mechanics and engineers are working away, probably doing some last-minute setup changes. They've obviously got the brake ducts and everything off the front there, so maybe it was a front camber adjustment or something like that, but just trying to fine-tune this car to get the maximum out of qualifying.
It's always amazing how much work they do just before the cars take out to the track. Let's just walk next door, because of course Jenson Button is sharing this garage with a certain teammate who really did have a very special weekend last weekend, but still it ended up being a weekend to forget for Lewis Hamilton. Now, what was strange about this weekend, David, was that it was probably one of Lewis's greatest ever drives. He acknowledged that as well, but he just didn't get the result that he wanted, did he?
Lewis himself said that this was his strongest drive. You know, he was making passes around the outside into the high-speed chicane in Melbourne, which is just real bravery. But the race didn't deliver the race result that he would have liked, and ultimately, of course, he was taken out by Mark later on in the race.
There'll be plenty of Lewis Hamilton fans watching this, desperately hoping that Lewis can turn things around. And actually, as a driver, he's got a history of going from dodgy, difficult weekends to putting on a really impressive performance just after that.
Well, I think Australia was a difficult weekend for him. Forget about the Saturday, but in the Sunday, the comments over the radio, which everyone now can hear, I think they were inappropriate. Should not have happened. Lewis needs to have cool head around him. He hasn't got his father. He's still going through the process of finding new management for himself. I think he should have established who the new management was going to be before saying to his father, look, Dad, I'd prefer to be on my own. I think a miscalculation. But anyway, he has been supreme, and he's already said it was his best race. I doubt that personally, because winning races is what this is about.
Well, we can see the car being worked on behind us. A little less work going on Lewis Hamilton's car. He was actually quickest in both of the free practice sessions on Friday. He really does love driving here. And he will be looking for something very strong, very special this weekend. And so will McLaren, because they've acknowledged they don't necessarily have the fastest car at the moment, but they're right there on Ferrari's heels. They've picked up the points, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they've taken a step forward here. They brought some developments for this weekend, and if we look through Friday practice and Saturday morning practice, I think they've closed the gap. Ultimately, whether it will be enough when it comes to qualifying remains to be seen. But one thing that we've seen with Lewis is that after a maybe not his best weekends, he bounces back with a real monster performance. So I think he'll be fired up for this weekend.
You have to say that McLaren themselves have perhaps overperformed in what they've got in terms of the car, in the same degree as you have to say Red Bull have underperformed. So roles have been reversed here. So it'll be interesting to see how this weekend pans out.
OK, so McLaren have got a bit of a battle on their hands to pick up some points once again. Last year, of course, the battle was between McLaren and Ferrari. We're now going to make our way down to the Ferrari garage because they were pipped to third place in the Constructors' title last year by McLaren. They're smarting from that, and they have designed a very special car that's looking fantastic in the hands of one certain driver. Now, David, Fernando Alonso is a driver many people describe as a leader. Ferrari have been looking for a leader for a long time. Is he fulfilling expectations, do you think?
Unquestionably. What a dream start he had to his Ferrari career, winning first time out in Bahrain. So you could say he was somewhat fortunate because of the problems that Sebastian Vettel had. But nonetheless, you count the winners with the checkered flag. It was very interesting to see in Melbourne that he was following the team, obviously following his teammates to the end of the checkered flag. Sorry, we just had to... we're being asked to step a little bit away from the entrance of the Ferrari garage now.
Ferrari obviously don't want us near their cars today. I don't know why, because we're saying nice things about them, Eddie, and nice things about Fernando. We saw the shot there of his car facing the wrong way at the start of the race.
Well, a lot of people think that he drove a Stormer to get... I see it the other way around. I think he made a very basic mistake at the first corner. I think he was extremely fortunate that the pace car, the safety car was there, that the weather went in his favour. The fact that he couldn't get by Massa, I certainly, if I was Massa, I wouldn't have let him by, and I wouldn't glad to see that there aren't team orders at this early stage of the season. Because nevertheless, Ferrari must say that the best chance of winning the championship is with Alonso.
How important was it for Felipe Massa not to let Fernando pass him? Because if he'd have let Fernando through, it would have almost been a signal to the fact that Fernando's the team leader, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jake. I'm struggling with these BMWs. They may be feeder formulas, but they make a lot of noise, don't they? Motorbike engines, I believe. Yeah, it was interesting to see that Ferrari's choice was to let their drivers go racing. I think it's commendable on one hand. You know, Eddie may disagree when they're looking at the long-term future for the World Championship, but, you know, Felipe's come back 2 races in from a very serious accident last year in Budapest. So in many ways, it sends the right message to both the drivers. They're getting equal opportunity and equal chance to go racing.
OK, well, let's just walk up here because I want to take us up to Red Bull to discuss their chances over this race weekend. But it's worth just mentioning how good this car is that Ferrari have produced, Eddie. They stopped development very early on the F60. It's a great relief to the whole team that it's performing, isn't it, the F10? I
think it's a great relief to Italy and worldwide fans of Ferrari. There's no more emotive team in the whole of the paddock than there are the Ferrari. There's, you know, and we see how they operate their marketing strategy. Everything revolves around Ferrari, and to have a slow car is actually embarrassing for the nation. This is a very solid, very good car, and I think they've got a very nice team. We saw last week.
Fernando for world champion, what do we think?
Well, he's certainly got the potential. You know, he's a double world champion, absolute star driver when his performance. And I think actually, just going back to your point, Eddie, is we expect so much from Ferrari because for the last decade they've delivered great reliability, great performance. So when they have an average season like we saw last year, suddenly we think the wheels are coming off the wagon, but not at all. You know,
well dealt with, by the way. I like it when they put obstacles in our path in the pit lane.
Yeah, but it was below average, David, wasn't it, really?
It was, but it's because I think our expectations of Ferrari are so high.
Compared to what we're used to. You know, Lily Jody Scheckter, more recent years than Michael Schumacher, this was a very, very poor performance last year, something that any Ferrari lover would be very upset about.
That would have been a good year for Jordan. They won a Grand Prix.
Listen, we're not comparing Jordan and Ferrari now, are we?
But the important thing is, Ferrari have recovered. The big question now is, can Red Bull recover, particularly for Sebastian Vettel? Now, Sebastian Vettel, let's take a look on board at him because he is driving just fantastically well at the moment, David, and not getting the rewards that he deserves.
Now, it must be so frustrating for Mark Webber because whatever lap time he delivers, Sebastian Vettel is able to just find that little extra 10. You know, his qualifying performance has been superb, but ultimately, you know, 4th place in the first race, and here we see getting a consoling arm from Christian Horner after the disappointment of Melbourne where they had a front wheel issue.
Yeah, but David, you have to bear in mind that Mark Webber has made some very basic mistakes, and he's not endearing himself to the team. He's cost the team points. The opposite applies to Vettel. He has been let down by the team and the car and its reliability. This guy should be leading the World Championship right now.
He's handled it very well, though. You know, he could have publicly come out and said this isn't good enough and all those sorts of things, but in actual fact, it shows the level of confidence he has and the relationship he has with the team, that he's just taken it in his stride.
How much of that confidence is coming from the fact that he would know deep down that if they can sort out the reliability, this is a championship-winning car?
Of course, you know, he's very young in his career. He's confident that he's delivering what he can, but it's not going to be lost on him that he should be sitting there with 50 points right now, and he's not.
OK, well, Christian Horner has joined us here in the pit lane. Christian, gearing up for a very important qualifying session. So far, qualifying has been the day that's put the smile on your face, and the race day you haven't looked quite so happy so far this season.
Yeah, no, qualifying in both Bahrain and Malaysia's gone very well for... Sorry, Bahrain and Melbourne's gone very well for us, and it's just been frustrating. We've not been able to convert that into 2 race wins, but the most important thing is, you know, the car's got very good pace.
Yeah, the car may have good pace, but at the moment it's not picking up the points. How important is it, looking all the way ahead to the championship and the title, that you pick up a big clutch of points this weekend?
Well, this weekend is important for us. I mean, the only comforting factor is that Fernando hasn't won both the races and, you know, running away in points so far, or indeed any other driver. So, but it's important, you know, for both of our drivers to score strongly here this weekend.
We've seen in the VT beforehand your arm round Sebastian after the outcome of Melbourne. Clearly, Mark has had a little bit of a disappointing role as well. So is your role at this stage as much motivating them, giving them the confidence that they can deliver at the next race, or how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I don't want either of them to change what they're doing. And, you know, Sebastian's in great form at the moment. He's been driving, you know, brilliantly well so far. You know, Mark had a very eventful race in Melbourne, but his pace was very strong. So, you know, we just need to make sure we give him a car that can get to the finish.
OK, Christian, well, stay with us while we take a look at Mark Webber's Australian Grand Prix. Now, Christian, Mark looked like a very aggressive young man in front of his home favourites last weekend, didn't he? What was it like for you on the pit wall watching his race unfold?
Well, I mean, he made some great moves. I think he passed the Ferrari 3 times and, you know, got out of shape a couple of times. When he went onto slicks, he went off. But and the move there on Lewis was, you know, marginal. It was a racing accident at the end of the day. You know, 3 of them going into one corner was never really going to work.
Yeah, obviously very, very disappointing for Mark in his home race. He just doesn't seem to cut any luck there at all. I think his best result's been 5th place in his career there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Australia, but neither driver. I mean, Sebastian's never finished that race yet. Mark's obviously not been blessed with luck there, but we're hoping for a bit better here this weekend in Malaysia.
Christian, there's no doubt that everybody is talking about the way that you qualify and how brilliant it is and how successful it is. Nevertheless, the gossip on the pit lane and actually the readers who are writing into us, there seems to be something special that you're doing with the rear suspension to lower the downforce, or to lower the ride height, should I say, to give you that extra little oomph in qualifying and yet build it up for the race. Can you give us any lead on that, maybe?
Well, it was quite interesting last weekend. Apparently, one of our drivers was retiring. Our fuel tank wasn't big enough, and then we had active ride suspension. So, you know, I can categorically tell you we've got nothing, you know, trick like that on the car. If you know, the problem is, if competitors have a problem, really they should, you know, they have the mechanism to protest. You know, and they should do that.
So you can assure us that we're not looking at another double diffuser year of controversy or something like that?
Well, for me, it demonstrates that we're doing something right, because you know, people only start pointing fingers and moaning when you know, when you're quick and competitive. So we're focused on our own performance, and we're tending to ignore you know, fictitious comments.
Now, Christian, finally, you're doing something right, but not everything right at the moment. Reliability is a word that I'm sure is ringing around in your ears. You've had issues with the engine this weekend. Mark Webber had an engine problem. Sebastian's wheel at the last race, he had a problem with the engine in the first race. When you've got a load of different little niggly issues creating problems, how do you get on top of that and create a reliable car?
I think the most important thing is not to let it fluster you, not to let it distract the guys from doing the job that they're doing. And you know, yes, we've had some frustrating issues. You know, Renault have been working very hard on their side. The spark plug issue on Sebastian's car in Bahrain was, you know, was desperately frustrating, as was the wheel issue in Melbourne. But you know, in both situations, we've been at the front, we've been controlling the race, and we've just got to keep pushing and get those situations resolved.
Okay, well, Nicky Lauda thinks that your championship push is over already. I'm sure you don't agree with him, do you?
He came and apologised to me earlier. He said he didn't say that at all, but no, Nicky probably did.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. Nice to chat to you. We're now going to head off up the pit lane. We'll speak to you very shortly. And interestingly, would you go in this way, Eddie? While Christian was talking, rain started to fall. Now, it's a big issue here this weekend. We think that there's going to be rain at some point or another. We just hope that we get some kind of qualifying in. We don't want a repeat of Brazil 2009, do we?
Well, no, it's guaranteed we're going to have rain at some point, as you say, during today and tomorrow. It's just a question of whether it falls during key moments when the drivers are out on track. You know, we've had a few spots of rain here. That's a real big pressure for the teams, because do you go early in the qualifying session and risk missing that really key moment in the last few minutes? I think that, you know, for the small teams, it's not an issue. They just need to be out on track. But for the other teams, then it makes it a bit more tricky.
I'd like to just pause for a moment, go back to what Christian said. He singled out Alonso. And I think he's mistaken to do that, because he's at one swoop. He's forgetting about Hamilton and Button and a lot of other drivers who are in contention, even the great Michael Schumacher. I think they believe, if what he just said, which is what he said, Alonso was the key target.
Well, of course, one of the big questions in Formula One at the moment is the great Michael Schumacher in with the title shout? Now, if there's one thing we weren't expecting to say this year, David, it was Michael Schumacher just cannot get past the Toro Rosso. Now, this is the start of the race. He spent most of it stuck behind Jaime Alguersuari. We just weren't expecting that from him.
Well, no, we weren't expecting him to be behind. But, you know, if we see the images at the start of the Grand Prix, you know, he damaged his wing at the beginning of the Melbourne race, and that's what put him down there after having to stop for a new nose. It is difficult to overtake with these cars. We've seen that. And maybe Michael's being a bit tentative, but given that he'd already lost so much time at the beginning of the race, it was important that he didn't risk getting himself involved in another tangle. He knew he wasn't going to score any serious points.
It was an amazing moment, actually, seeing Lucas Tagrassi's Virgin racing car come back at him once more. People have not just laid down and said, yep, you're Michael Schumacher, through you go and win another race.
Well, you don't think so?
They're not making it easy for him.
Well, it's a different generation. 3 years have elapsed. Why would people, you know, these young drivers, they think Michael Schumacher in the same vein as perhaps Fangio. Great people, but not in our era. Come back and take us on, and you won't. We'll beat you.
Yeah, and I don't think actually anyone ever used to move over for Michael. I think Senna was a different story. They saw that yellow helmet coming and they got out of the way because they didn't want to get the wrath.
Some people used to slow down right in front of him in the rain, didn't they?
Yeah, that was it. That was the only way I could get close to him.
Funny you should say that, David. I used to tell our drivers, if you see Michael coming and he's really quick, let him go. Don't hold him back, and don't hold yourself back. And the reason being, you lose far more time trying to hold a position than hang on to his gearbox when he's gone by.
Interesting, because that is not happening this season. Just wait here for one moment. I'm going to go and grab Ross Brawn. He's just here in the garage having a discussion with Andrew Shovlin, who of course last year was Jenson Button's race engineer. Ross, can we just borrow you while you get the engine cover popped on the car, and if you could just wander out the front and have a bit of a chat with us, because we're discussing all things Mercedes, Michael Schumacher's return, how things are going for you this season. You've got the 7 times world champion in your team, and you are the current defending Constructors' World Champions. How difficult has it been to manage expectations for you this season?
I guess it's a very good question, but within the team, we're just a bit disappointed we're not quick enough yet. So that's the main issue for us. We're not worried, or at least I'm not personally worried about the external expectations. It's the ambitions of the team that's the most important thing.
Ross, when the public at home who saw you win this World Championship, both championships last year, how do you explain that just the passing of a few months in the winter, you go from setting the pace to trying to catch up?
It is a normal cycle of Formula One, and one of the bigger changes we've had this year are the tyres. We've got a much narrower front tyre, a different construction rear, and we've probably not adapted as well to that change as some of the other teams. We haven't anticipated what those tyres need, and some of the changes we're doing in the early part of the season is to try and improve that.
Ross, I just asked Christian Horner about when the Red Bull car, our listeners, our viewers and people up and down the paddock, they're concerned about the ride height change, well, supposedly changes when in qualifying. Is this something you've had a look at, or are you quite comfortable that it's okay?
As much as we can see. I mean, the biggest issue or the biggest change you can make is obviously with tyre pressures. So if you run a lower tyre pressure in qualifying, the car will run lower, you can raise those tyre pressures for the race. I think everybody's seeking some clarification from the FIA on what is and isn't permissible. I think it'd be a good issue to clear out the way just to remove any doubts or concerns, because I personally don't have any doubts, but I think, as always, we want to get these things out of the way so it doesn't colour Formula 1.
Just coming back to what you mentioned about the change in rear construction and the narrower front tyre, how can you simulate for that? Do you rely on Bridgestone giving you the information and you design your car around it, or do you have internal? Why would you not have got as much out of it in comparison to some of the other teams?
We get, because the tyre wasn't tested until the spring, we didn't get an opportunity to actually run the tyre on the track. We're working off data which Bridgestone give all the teams. I guess it's the interpretation of that data. Also, we perhaps didn't build enough adjustment in the car. For once we started testing, we came to the limit of our adjustments in some areas, and we didn't expect to be there. So we're opening up those areas for the future.
Now, we can't leave without a quick mention about each of your drivers. First of all, Nico Rosberg holding his own against Michael Schumacher. He's looking all right, isn't he?
Well, he's keeping him honest, isn't he?
Isn't he?
Which is great. Very pleased with Nico. Very intense, applies himself very well, and really happy. Obviously, Michael's taken a little while to settle in, but what I see with Michael is each race is getting better. He was definitely in better shape for Melbourne and didn't show in the race because the car was a bit more damaged than people appreciated after his accident. But I definitely saw progress from the first race to there. We're seeing progress again here. So I think our two drivers are going to be much closer in qualifying this afternoon.
OK, so Michael Schumacher is getting faster all the time. Sounds ominous for the rest of Formula 1. Thank you very much. Good luck today.
You just need to give him a car.
That's exactly it.
Both of them a car.
The pressure is on you right there.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Nice to chat to you, Ross. Thanks. So we've heard from Ross Brawn, and tomorrow we'll hear from Mr. Schumacher himself.
So you still believe that you can sort this car out and you can beat Nico Rosberg, you can make this comeback a huge success still?
I believe so, yes. I mean, to beat Nico will be hard and difficult, but I have quite a lot of trust in myself, yes.
Doesn't he? He's a man not short of confidence, and you can see what else Michael Schumacher had to say yesterday. Now, we can't stop talking about Australia and what went on last week without focusing in on quite a nasty moment for Kamui Kobayashi. And I know that the Grand Prix Drivers Association worked very hard on stopping cars from jumping up and hitting into the side of others, and this could have been a very bad moment.
Well, it could indeed, and what I think is a key thing that we have to recognise here is that the back of the curbs, typically you have a curb that rises up, and one of the things the drivers have worked with the FIA is to make sure the back of the curbs are actually flat to avoid the car being launched. So the little moment we saw him in the air was actually from the grass.
This potentially is the worst kind of accident that you can have, where there's a big group of cars at the start of a race and the front wing going away. The driver is absolutely out of any control. He's a passenger. And this was a frightening moment. Anything could have happened. We could have had a fatality. We could have had for everyone to walk away as testament to the new rules, of course. But I think there was an element of luck there too.
Absolutely. Martin Brundle described getting your front wing stuck under your front tyres as the third worst thing that can happen to you as a Formula 1 driver. I would not like to experience the first and second worst things. And actually, the Sauber front wing has been a topic of discussion so far this weekend. Changes have been made to it. Here's Ted Kravitz with that news and all the rest of the paddock goings on.
Following those three wing failures in Australia, Sauber have sent redesigned and reinforced front wing pylons from their factory in Switzerland.
We've been running the same pylons for all winter testing, so you know we were a little bit surprised at what happened in Australia, but nevertheless the team will bring something stronger for this race, and hopefully we won't have any issues.
Lewis Hamilton says he's not going to take mid-race strategy decisions into his own hands, even though the wrong call by his engineers cost him second place in Australia.
There was no kiss or make-up we needed to do. I mean, we're a team and we win and we lose together, and you really do rely on the guys to do the job, and I think we're just trying to understand the tyres a little bit more, and I don't think we thought the tyres would last so long, but they did.
Of course, Hamilton's teammate Jenson reckoned the tyres would last and was proved right. Coming into the Malaysian weekend, high on confidence, Button believes another win is not out of the question.
Hopefully we'll be closer in qualifying, maybe challenging, and then the race, if it's dry, strategy is important, but raw pace is going to be key around here, I think. If we are fighting at the front, I think we can really challenge people, and that's exciting.
Red
This
Bull's
is what I
weekend here in Malaysia has already been hit by unreliability with an engine failure on Mark Webber's car in practice. Up till now, all the failures had been on Sebastian Vettel's car. The German's Melbourne problem was a wheel nut failure that broke the front wheel hub.
Sometimes small things have a big outcome. I mean, one part fails here and then it leads 5 other parts to fail, and then in the end you have to stop the car.
You wouldn't say that the car's too fragile as a package then?
Possibly, but the things that have tripped us up so far haven't been the things that you might say are a result of aggressive design or development.
Second place man in Melbourne, Robert Kubica's relieved Ferrari didn't make Felipe Massa switch positions with Fernando Alonso. He thinks Alonso would have given him a far harder challenge from behind.
For sure, if I would have quicker driver, it would be a bit more difficult, but to be honest, I was pretty confident wherever driver I have behind, I could keep him behind me.
As tickets go on sale for the inaugural Korean Grand Prix on October the 24th, we have our first sight of the venue for next year's Indian Grand Prix. The circuit, 20 miles outside Delhi, includes a corner much like Istanbul's Turn 8.
We're on schedule at the moment. Our plan is to have the circuit completed by July next year, so that we have a couple of months to fine-tune the venue and also to get the necessary FIA homologation. So we're confident we'll have a race at the end of next year.
Proving there's nothing on an F1 car that can't be fixed with gaffer tape, Virgin Racing look to be on the way to respectability. Virgin are the only team yet to finish a race, but at least if it rains this weekend, it won't matter that their fuel tank is still too small.
In wet conditions is not a problem at all. I think we don't have to save any fuel in wet conditions, and it's only in dry conditions. We can't run full power the whole race.
And finally, F1's team bosses have been discussing proposals to spice up the F1 show. Various ideas, from a lottery system in qualifying to more mechanical grip from low-profile tyres and the possible reintroduction of the KERS Power Boost, are all on the table for consideration.
I think we're going to have quite an exciting race here, but there's still an underlying problem. We must be fairly resolute that we have to do something, but if we're going to have more races like Australia, then I don't think too many people will be complaining.
And we'll hope to hear from Martin Whitmarsh live before long. Right, just half an hour to go until it's time for qualifying here for the Malaysian Grand Prix. But it's worth just showing you this. This is actually the front wing of Kamui Kobayashi's Sauber. You can see how much thicker and how much wider these are. They've worked very hard to try and make these a little bit safer, and he'll be hoping desperately that this front wing stays attached to the car. But it's not just that they've been focusing on here at Sauber. Every single team, every weekend, focuses on tyres, and quite rightly so. You can work as hard as you like on the car, but these are the only things connecting the car to the road. And over a race weekend, there's a whole lot of them for the drivers to focus on. Here's Martin Brundle.
The Formula One tyre regulation changes for 2010 both involve reductions. This front dry tyre is 20 millimetres narrower, that's just under 1 inch. It was thought last year that the front tyre had too much grip in relation to the rear. Now this is the total Bridgestone tyre allocation per driver per Grand Prix weekend. Bridgestone bring over 2,000 tyres in total. For 2010, each driver's limited to 11 sets of dry tyres, that's down from 14, and must include 6 sets of this harder compound tyre referred to as the prime, and 5 sets of a softer compound tyre they call the option, and it's painted with a green stripe. For Friday practice, each driver is allocated 2 sets of prime and 1 set of the softer option tyres, but at the end of the day they must be handed back. This leaves 8 sets of dry tyres going into Saturday, but before qualifying, 1 set of each compound must also be handed back. This leaves 6 sets of dry tyres for qualifying and the race, 3 sets of primes and 3 sets of options. The drivers must use the fresh grip of the new tyres in the most tactical way during qualifying, at the start or during the Grand Prix. Drivers are also allocated 4 sets of these intermediate tyres and 3 sets of the full wet weather tyre. Now, unless it rains during the Grand Prix, the drivers are obliged to use at least 1 set of the hard prime compound and 1 set of the softer option compound. Those drivers that get through to the top 10 shootout in qualifying 3 must start the race on exactly the set of tyres with which they set their grid time.
And keep your eyes peeled today. The wets or the intermediate tyres are more than likely to make an appearance. And don't forget that you can actually watch all of today's qualifying on the BBC Sport website. There are Twitter feeds, news, blogs, all on there as well. You can also press the red button for alternative commentary of today's sessions. And for the next 7 days, the BBC iPlayer will have all of our coverage, including the F1 Forum after tomorrow's race, available for you whenever, wherever you want it. Now, if we were sweltering during the first race of the weekend in Bahrain, just spare a thought for Karun Chandhok and Bruno Senna. How hot were they under the collar? Because they arrived at the first race of the season, having never turned a wheel in a car that had never before been driven. Talk about being thrown in at the deep end.
There were a few big hits going on.
Yeah, he elbowed me in the face.
Oh, well, you know, it's my strategy to try to elbow him in the face, but he didn't. He's quite a resilient boxer.
So he finished the race on Sunday, so you were trying to get rid of him. So it's your turn this Sunday.
Something like this, yeah.
Can you just tell us what it was like to actually see that checkered flag to go a race distance?
It was actually quite hard work trying to get out of people's way, and especially towards the end of the race, Jenson I think passed me on the last lap. So I think the last thing I wanted to do was take him off. It was just nice for the mechanics and for the engineers. I mean, they're the poor guys who stayed there 2 nights in a row working to get the cars finished. You know, we're just the lucky guys who benefit from that hard work. So it was nice to see them really get some reward.
Bruno, I think Karun's car did about a third of all the laps that the team's ever done, but all in one day, is that right?
Yeah, something like this. You know, I haven't done much more than I think about 300 kilometers with my car, so it's good to know that the cars are good enough to finish the race at this early stage of development. So we're doing it step by step, and we're finding the problems on the go. And unfortunately, it's very public. Everybody sees our cars breaking down, and people have their own ideas. It's very hard for people to understand that we haven't had the same preparation as the other teams, and everything that they've done in thousands of kilometers before the season started, we're doing right now.
You guys obviously get on very well together. You were teammates at iSport before you actually got to F1. How much do you think that has helped you through some of the tough times that you've had so far in these few races?
I think it helps that you know, it just means that you got somebody else to talk to who's in a similar situation. Obviously, we're both, in our first year of F1, both in a tough situation, going straight to Bahrain with no testing. And I think we work well together. We worked well together in 2008. And, if you have 2 drivers just sitting 2 opposite ends of the motorhome, then it's not good in a situation like we're in at the moment.
Bruno, does it matter to you whether you beat the new teams? How does it work mentally for you?
Well, I think at this stage we are very much focused on ourselves, on sorting out our problems and getting everything together. But the objective is still the same: to be the best of the new teams. It's very important for us to prove ourselves as a potential for the following years, both in terms of drivers as well as the team, because we're not here just for a year. We want to be here for the long term. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think from Europe then we can start chipping away a bit quicker.
We have modest targets at the moment in the position that we're in, and first step was getting 1 car to the finish. Hopefully we'll get 2 to the finish this weekend.
You saw the chaos that the weather caused last year. What are your thoughts for this weekend?
Well, we were here in 2008 and in the GP2 race, and it rained as we were on the grid. I've seen jet skis being driven down turn 3 when we came winter testing once in V6. It's ridiculous the amount of rain you can have here. But in the situation we're in, again, I think it's a bit of a lottery, and it could benefit us rather than being a full dry race where it could be a bit harder.
Well, Hispania Racing are just one of 3 new teams who, as you can see, are working so hard to get these cars ready for the early races. Now, despite taking the Lotus name, sorry guys, and of course the green and yellow colour as well, this team count Malaysia as much their home as Norfolk. Mind you, just going back a few months, they didn't have a home. In fact, this team didn't even exist.
Well, they began in 1958. Sterling Moss won the first race for them. Jim Clark became world champion with them, so did Graham Hill. They gave a first Grand Prix chance to future world champions.
I think you've seen the last of a Lotus car in Formula 1 race.
Time's running out. Lotus will not be taking part.
If these good old names can't live up to their past, it's better they're not with us any longer.
When I first went to Hingham, it was 4 people and a Le Mans car, so it didn't look very promising.
This is our first mock-up engine that'll be powering our car to hopefully some degree of glory. What do I think? It's probably an impossible task, but we've got to achieve it.
My experience in the music business is able to get the best out of creative people, and Mike is no different from Madonna.
That story of just 4 of us in there on day one is entirely true, with Sylvie answering the phone on reception, saying, hello, Lotus Racing, how can I help you? And when someone said, well, I'm looking for a job, she'd go, fine, I'll put you through to HR. Sort of let the phone go and then go, hello, it's HR, or yes, marketing, hello, it's marketing.
Chris here is putting the radiator ducts on, ready for when the radiators get here in the next couple of days. The fuel system should be here tomorrow. We should be getting our first seat today. We've got all the big components, and it's just that 2-cent widget that's going to stop us from firing up on the 5th.
It's been quite a journey. We started 21 weeks ago, I think we got our entry. And since then, we've gone from 3 people to just over 100 people. We've got 4,000 drawn parts that go onto the car. They've come from all over the world. And today, hopefully, they've all come together in one place. And in a couple of hours' time, we'll be firing up. And that will be the end of one journey and the start of another.
We're on the home run now, and that's the first new Lotus Cosworth that's fired up for 27 years. So that's a big milestone.
It looks good. Everybody's flat out. To do a car in such a short time, I think it's already a big achievement. It's better than I expected at this stage.
When we go to the shakedown, of course, that's where the action really starts. That's when we first get to see just how good a job we've done.
Do a lap or 2, come in, check everything, then go out, do another lap. It's a very slow process of gradually putting more kilometres on the car. If we do 200 kilometres on a shakedown, then that would be pretty amazing from our side.
When we get to the test, primarily, we'll be able to judge ourselves against the other teams, the established ones as well as the newbies. And I think we're pretty confident that we'll have quite a strong showing against the new guys.
In Jerez, we did 141 laps on the last day, which was the most of any team in one day. And here again today, lots of laps. So the car's been basically very reliable.
Let's be real now. We're not going to go to Bahrain and win a Grand Prix, are we? To finish the first Grand Prix would be fantastic.
This year is all about learning, providing a reliable car, maybe beating some of the new teams, and maybe challenging some of the established teams towards the end of the season.
When you give yourself the Lotus name, you can't drive around out of shot. You've got to be racing the established teams, you've got to be scoring points, and down the line you've got to be scoring podiums, and you've got to win Lotus its 80th Grand Prix. We're at the beginning of a long road, but hopefully it's a good beginning.
Well, it's certainly been a good beginning so far. Tony Fernandez, the team owner, is with us. What's it like watching that, Tony, seeing what you've been through?
Well, actually quite amazing. You forget about all the beginnings. It all merges in, but very nice. Made the little hair that I have left stand.
How key was it in the whole build-up of the team to employ 2 experienced drivers and resist the temptation to go with maybe a paid driver and one? Was that something driven by yourself or Mike?
Well, yeah, I take the credit, if there is credit. I'm not sure the shareholders feel the same way. But yeah, I think it was key because I thought that the drivers can give a lot of input into the team. And it's penny wise, pound foolish. You may get a little bit of cash in, but you don't get the car moving fast enough, you have more accidents, etc., etc. So I decided, let's take the risk, get 2 good guys in, which help us deliver the car.
Tony, there are people, me included, who are calling to question your sanity. First of all, you ran the record label, you set up in Airline AirAsia, and now doing Formula One. Are you completely crazy, or could you try and convince our people listening that you're not, that you are a real, active, mentally astute person?
Well, looking at you, what could I say? I think number one, I mean, everyone said I was crazy when I set up the airline. 3 days after 9/11, we went from 2 planes to 90 aircraft, from 200,000 passengers to 27 million. I think Lotus is a phenomenal brand. I think Formula One is a phenomenal business. It's really still a European sport. There's plenty of upside. You know, the more you look at this year, so much more excitement in Malaysia because of us. And so once the world gets around it, there's going to be a hell of a lot more people watching it, a lot of upside, costs are coming down. We'll see in a few years' time whether I really was mad.
Now, you've talked about making it into the top 5 in the next 3 years. All of the new teams are saying, you know, we're in it for the long haul, we want to be successful. But there are things like this which just add slightly to the pressure. Just tell us the story behind this.
Well, this is probably, of my 6 months, this is probably the most important thing that's happened to me. We were very clear that we wanted to make the Chapman family happy with what we were doing. And just before the Bahrain race, Clive Chapman, Colin's son, came up to me and gave me his father's cap, which he used to put in this kind of case, break the glass every time they won, throw it up in the air and pin it on the wall. It meant a lot to me. Of all the 6 months, that meant a lot to me because he said, Tony, you're the man who's going to take over my father's legacy, and we want to give you this. And, well, I'm not sure when we're going to break that glass, but it means a lot to us that we've actually got it.
Well, maybe it's because I'm a Norfolk boy, but that was certainly hairs on the back of your necktie, and we can see the hat there just in the back of the holder. Question is, how long is it going to be until you think you can break this thing open? It says in case of victory, break glass. Come on, give us a date. Give us a year, Tony. When's it going to happen?
No, not gonna say it. I think at least we know now what we have to do. You know, earlier on we did know. I think now we have more opportunity to see where we are. I really don't know. We'll work hard. We'll leave no stone unturned. But I think we've built a good structure to build a good team. And let's see how long it takes us.
OK, thank you so much for
Thanks very
us.
much, guys.
Great to have a chat. And, of course, it's not just the new teams that are working hard to build top structures and top teams. Even a team like Red Bull, who've been around for a few years and had a fantastic year last year, have to work so hard, even in pre-season, to make sure it's going to be a successful season. And as the rain starts to fall, you guys can have a look about just how tough a pre-season testing programme is in the company of DC.
Here we are in Barcelona for the final test of the pre-season. We're going to take a walk down to the paddock now to try and find out why, when you only have single car testing, it takes more than 50 trucks to operate those 11 cars.
We'd probably have more people here than we would have at a Grand Prix weekend. There's so many more engineers and designers here that you wouldn't take to every race. So there's about 80 people here from Red Bull.
Every single bolt and part for 12 grueling days is transported from Milton Keynes. Having obsessive-compulsive disorder is a bonus. After a short night's sleep, testing starts early. A briefing for the technicians outlines the day's entire programme.
Ian, what is your key responsibility today? You've had the morning briefing, so what would that actually have entailed?
It's going through the plan for the day, really. Today's a bit of a non-normal test day for us. We're planning a full race simulation. Sebastian Vettel today, so it's his team, his crew, his race engineers, his mechanics, everyone involved in running his car to try and do a full Saturday and Sunday simulation.
It's not just the design of the car which needs testing, it's how it performs with the tyres. So Bridgestone send a team of technicians. Red Bull buys engines from Renault, so their technicians also work 18-hour days.
In terms of preparation for the season ahead, are you on target?
Yes and no. It's always difficult. The season is the testing is so short. It's a bit more complicated because we have more Grand Prix with the same amount of engines, so the engine has to do more. So it's an ongoing development, and we won't be fully ready for sure.
Pit stops are about practice, and oh yes, more practice.
How many of these practices will the team actually do?
Well, we do hot pit stop practices here at the circuit. We try to do 3 days worth of those, but also at the factory we're doing a series of practices every single day before the first race. You'll have to excuse me.
As you can see, it's quite full on, this pit stop practice. I feel quite calm. Getting late into the Spanish night, the work continues. You join me here in the pit lane. We're going to peer our head over and try and call one of the guys over. Ollie Shank, who used to be responsible for bolting me into my Red Bull car. Evening, Ollie. Little bit of what you're getting on with tonight. It's burning the midnight oil, aren't you?
It's not too bad tonight, really. Test day number 3 here in Barcelona. And yeah, you can see, we don't even know where he is.
Sleep deprivation doesn't affect him. He doesn't even know where he is.
It's not too bad.
What time do you imagine you'll get finished tonight? Because testing always involves late nights.
We have what we call a night shift, but the engineer day shift will finish around 1 or 2 o'clock this morning.
And the start time in the morning?
6.
And if you're only getting 4 hours of a night's sleep, then presumably the overtime's quite good at testing.
Overtime, I wish. Maybe you'd have a word with Christian Brawn.
We're happy with the job we've done. We make good progress. The problem with winter testing is you can get sucked into what other people are doing, but this year we've really focused on our own performance, and we feel like we've made some good steps since Abu Dhabi.
Of course, the real test comes during the season, and Red Bull's speed has been proved with 2 pole positions in 2 races.
And over the line he goes into pole position. That's incredible.
And those pit stops have been the best in the pit lane. But the real issue for the team has been reliability.
There's something wrong with Vettel's car.
And a loss of power.
Despite all those hundreds of hours of testing in Spain, speed so far isn't bringing results.
And isn't Formula One just fantastic? All these teams search for these results. They look for reliability, they look for speed, and at the perfect moment, minutes before a qualifying session begins, it starts to rain. And actually, it's raining pretty heavily at the moment out there. And we all remember what happened last year. Instead of the guys sitting on the hill, they were sliding down it because there was so much rain. But when it comes so late before any session, David, it's a big scramble for the teams to get ready, isn't it?
It is. They'll have prepared for this on Thursday. They'll have prepared for this before they come, because they know that the weather is an issue here in Malaysia. We're just coming to the end of the rainy season. But nonetheless, it's that last minute, right, what tyres is it going to be? Is it intermediates? Is it full wet? Should we go early and set the pace for someone else, or should we sit back and wait and see what happens?
It's a matter of the team with a cool head here, and the people who have done the homework. They'll have strategies put in place, and usually is the top teams to get it right, invariably so. But they won't make too many changes just because it's wet, because for the race you have to bank on it starting at least dry, and you would go with dry settings. They're the quick ones.
And in case you were thinking those girls on the hill might look a bit cold sitting out there in the rain, trust me, it's no cooler because it's raining, and I can't believe that we're coming to the end of the rainy season. The rains are just incredible. You'll be making your own decisions, though, about tyres and how to deal with the wet weather, because you're getting back behind the wheel of a car, it's been confirmed.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going to race in DTM, which dovetails nicely with the Grand Prix calendar. There's only 10 races, so they're in between the actual events that we have. So, yeah, I'm missing adrenaline. Much as it's great to be standing here part of the team.
OK, well, DTM is a big racing series, popular in Germany. You're going to be driving for Mercedes. I'm sure you'll still have your beautiful Scottish hat on. How well do you reckon you're going to get on very quickly?
Well, there's a lot of quick young guys in there. You know, Paul Di Resta, who's the reserve driver for Force India, Gary Paffett, who's reserve driver for McLaren. So that, you know, there's no slouches in that championship. So I'll probably get well and truly beaten. But if you don't try, you don't know.
Yeah, you go. These racing drivers, they just can't give it up. And it's all because of the buzz of getting behind the wheel of a car. And there'll be a big adrenaline buzz for these guys, because even in the dry, this is a very special circuit to try and get a fantastic pole lap round, isn't it?
Well, they've got to get it right here, because invariably this could be exactly what they're going to confront tomorrow in the race, and they need to have a very good wet setup.
OK, well, there you can see the rain is starting to fall. It is all about wet setups now. The weather has thrown a beautiful spanner into the works for qualifying for the Malaysian Grand Prix.